So for those rare among you who have never seen this is Siege Optimus, one of my favorite figures of all time. Here it is next to the Earthrise Optimus, a figure that I don't think lived up to the siege, but wasn't bad. Now, here they are next to Combiner Wars Hotspot, and you might notice some similarities here. I believe in the comics they called this the Primus Apotheosis. Like how all insects are trying to become Crab, all Cybertronians with faceplates are trying to become Optimus. Now here that is next to the Combiner Wars Onslaught, who was a retool of it, and a pretty good one for back in the day. I would point out like 3 of these are Voyagers and 1 is a Leader. Meanwhile, this is what Leader used to mean back in Power of the Primes with a Digivolving Optimus. The cool thing about Leaders back then was they were MP scale. Just so that way you can see what I mean, here's the MP10 Optimus Prime, the MMC Onslaught, the Magic Square Optimus who, fun fact for those of you who don't know, the current artist for the Transformers comic books uses as a reference for how to draw and pose Optimus, and the MP Grimlock, which I am shocked they never updated because this figure sucks ass. But maybe that's because they knew there was no point, because there is another step up in terms of scale, and that's the Gigapower scale. And if you could harness the glory of Gigapower Grimlock, you could end world hunger, create cold fusion, and invent faster than light travel. And then this here is MMC Hotspot.
Well, I wasn't expecting this.
The absolute unit! I had no clue that this was going to be this big when it arrived. It was just so heavy in its box and I was confused as to why. And I have no clue why I didn't realize that, because if we don't cheat and we actually extend Onslaught's legs like they're supposed to be, then yeah, this was just the size that he always was. How did I never realize this thing was Gigapower scale? My brain just kept insisting that it was regular MP size. Though in my defense, it has been combined up into Bruticus for years now. Anyways, you may notice that it has been a long time since my last Masterpiece or third-party review. In fact, it's been significantly over a year. That's due to 3 reasons. 1, I have been stuck behind a mountainous backlog for years now. As it turns out, trying to review everything that releases is hard. 2, while I like almost all the third-party figures I get, I just haven't felt super inspired by any of them in a while. Like MMC's own Navigant. I've had that thing for a long while, and while their first aid was so good I needed to make a video on it, Navigant is just kind of another figure. It lacks the sauce. And 3, you guys don't care. If I want to ensure that a video bombs, I make it a Masterpiece review. But this time I feel so inspired that I just wanna, and the threat of no one caring will not stop me. So kindly, your likes! Please give, and maybe subscribe. Behold the splendor of Mastermind Creations' Ignis, or Hotspot. What does the Scouter say about his beef levels? It's over 1 billion, holy shit! Gigapower Grimlock wishes he looked this swole. Or half this hardcore, what the hell? It has been like a decade and a half since I last watched the few episodes of G1 where the Protectobots appeared, but I don't remember Hotspot looking like a Doomslayer who could rip Megatron apart barehanded. This thing looks so effortlessly badass, and it's just coming at me with an energy that I can't place. He looks like something, and it took me so long to figure out what that was. But then I put him into this pose, and it hit me. Gigantically tall, tiny head, massive pauldrons with forearms just barely sticking out of them, fists for thumping, booster backpack, and tiny adorable feeties sticking out of huge boots that go from the knee all the way down to the floor. That is a damn Space Marine! Question is this a Salamander or an Ultramarine? I do not have a figure in my collection that looks like the cons should fear it more, and that is an impressively high bar. This dude rocks so hard and feels so good. It seems that MMC got the memo about Onslaught's hips only barely being good enough for the combined mode, so the legs here are supercharged. Defensor is not going to fall over easily for the same reasons, even if this is actually a borderline retool of their Onslaught, which took me forever to figure out. The only part they seem to share is the hands, but the head and shoulders transform the exact same way. The legs are transforming with what feels like a different take on the same idea, and the panels that made the entire sides come together as one cohesive whole were just moved from the legs to the backpack. This is a refinement of everything that Onslaught was, and Onslaught was already one of the best figures of all time. And I know I have the backpack wrong, I don't care. Seriously, why would I go through like 10 extra steps of transformation to make the backpack like 5% different when it already looks fine and holds position with no problems? It's hard to describe just how good this thing looks, and just how great it feels. Every pose I put this in feels like something that with other figures I'd have spent 20 minutes lamenting over in order to get perfect. Here, because of the dynamic sculpt and the beastly vibe. Anytime you move him even 1 inch, he looks like he's giving a heroic speech as he shrugs off gunfire while tearing someone in half long ways barehanded. He has so much power and presence. MMC shows up to work once again to make sure that everyone knows how it's done. There is no company out there who competes with their stuff. Magic Square, when they deign to make an MP scale figure, will put something out that poses a little better. Meanwhile, MMC will put out a figure that looks better, transforms better, has a more functional alt mode, and is just more fun with every single release. Makotron, you do great work, man. Anyways, the head keeps the awesome train belching out smoke as the fires burn deep within its heavy metal engine. The face is like what if Optimus Prime decided that he needed to be a villain and Nova Prime wasn't remotely scary enough. The only 2 problems I have with this are, you have to grab it by the face, otherwise you force his ears back into his head, which are a pain in the ass to get back out, and despite the size of the figure, I worry are delicate enough to break, and then, no light up feature when this was $60 more than your Onslaught used to be. For shame, MMC. For shame! To be fair, I don't know how they would have fitted in with the ear expansion gimmick. However, if you look inside the combiner head, I think it's a fair bet that it was planned to have glowing eyes even late into development. The head, like the rest of the figure, is badass to a jaw-dropping degree. So, the robot mode is top tier. It's huge, it feels great, it's effortlessly cool. No matter what you do with it, you're just having a good time. And it reminds me of so many of the hardest core characters in fiction, it almost doesn't remind me of Hotspot at all. Medicus felt like First Aid. Navigant felt like Streetwise, though I think I vastly prefer the toy colors on that one. Meanwhile, Ignis feels like a war god possessing the body of Hotspot, and he is named appropriately for it. For accessories, he comes with 2 sticks and 2 very basic guns. The guns kind of suck, until they have this folding handle that you are meant to use to alternate between this being small enough for the core figure to use and thick enough for the combiner to use. By folding the handle 80% of the way up, suddenly it looks like it has a magazine, and its badassness points go through the roof. Seriously, give more of these magazines. Way too often, they just look like a cardboard tube a little kid would pick up and go pew 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 with. You can add the pipes to the guns, and this doesn't look like much of anything in his hands, but they kind of look like fire hoses in the alt mode, though I think with this guy, it's more like hoses that shoot fire than ones that are meant to put them out. So the accessories are fine, and slightly better when you mistransform them. And then the posability fucking rules. Head has a bit more up than normal, a lot more down, a good side to side, which gets barely better if you pop the ears in, and an neck. Shoulders pull massively more than a 90 without cheating. With cheating, they pull significantly more than a 180. However, messing with the arms at all will probably pop open this panel. It's like my one frustration with this figure. Maximum elbows. And with the way that it has 2 joints for the elbow, you can fake a backwards butterfly. The panel has to be open though, so that will never look the best. Extremely articulated hands that only lack splay on the fingers, and the thumb only has a base knuckle, plus the fingers even have a bit of flex upwards. Rotation and slight sword-wielding wrists, as well as the ability to fake it for massive sword-wielding wrists. Extreme ab crunch with the swivel above the hips. Legs are unimpeded in all directions, and you can cheat them for the massive can-can forward up over his head. Thigh swivel above the knee and unfortunately not below it. Sadly, only normal 90 knees with no hope for more, but this is like the one average joint on the figure. And feet, I've heard described as chintzy, but honestly, if these had more hold, I'd say they were amazing. Yes, they are very flat, but they have a massive pivot, maximum toe up, maximum toe down. And it has the ability to flex in the middle of the foot, which gets you even more options for having this stand right. It's extremely good, even by normal foot standards, and insanely good for how insane the joint is. Sorry for the long articulation section. I know that is the most boring part of the video, but it's fair to say that this thing needed it, because it is one of the best articulated figures of all time. It has 1 joint with average range. It has way more than the average number of joints, and its joints, with the exception of the one, all have at least 2 times the range of average. How is this thing even going to transform when they packed this many joints into the figure? Insanely easily, as it turns out. This is one of the easiest masterpiece transformations of all time. That, hilariously, I needed to use the instructions for because due to this guy being a combiner, I was using joints meant for the wrong mode and not understanding why it wasn't going together correctly. Once you learn what you were supposed to do, you can finish this in 1 minute. And it's pretty satisfying and fun while you do it, with the hardest part just being getting the arms to close together properly. Gotta love how the robot head gets sucked down into the combiner dome, just like Onslaught's did. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and this makes way too much sense. Also, I will not be showing off the base mode in this video. I do not give 1/1 billionth of a shit. You could offer me $1 to be allowed to put a base mode into a figure, and I just say, I don't care. Also, no combined mode in this either. That transformation is also really good, but the feet are insanely complex. That part, I didn't just need the instructions, I needed a video on how to do it. I'd have never figured it out without help. And that's me saying that, and I think that Deformation Space Red Wing isn't even that bad. Anyways, yeah, I don't want to spoil the combined mode until I have all the parts to complete it. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that one of the most satisfying things in the whole universe is extending the ladder. You just grab it from the front and pull it till it comes out like a foot in one smooth motion. OCD man, very happy. And look, the alt mode isn't perfect. There's a gigantic hinge visible in the side, the windshield has clear panel lines, and the rear is kind of blank. And that's about it. Damn, this thing is so good. For starters, it rolls like a dream. It doesn't want to go on forever like some figures do, but I have literally never had a figure that rolled as smoothly as this. It positively flows across the table like water, no matter what surface it's on. It also has a full set of working stabilizers. They only barely reach high enough to keep the figure from rolling, but what more do you want? Ladder tilts all the way up and even has rotation. There are tanks that don't do this, and their turrets usually aren't on armatures that fold in 3 places and then has to reach like 6 inches back. With the accessories, you can have it look like it's ready to spray water, however, sadly, these are not blast effect compatible, so you can't tap into Hasbro's ready-made effects just sitting there waiting to get used like you could with their Bruticus and their Onslaught. Look at the sculpting and the clearly laid out fire truck accoutrement. Can you tell it transforms? A little bit. And it doesn't have a lot of clearance from the ground. They used their paint budget carefully and they picked out everything that needed it. And hell, they even pleased me by making this part a plastic insert. And I'll say it once again, not everything requires paint and this didn't need it. So I was not excited for Defensor. He is the most nothing combiner to me. A dude I barely remember on the best of days. Then MMC's First Aid came out and I was like, I know I can't give 2 craps about this team, but based on this, I know it's going to be great, so I'll pick it up. Then Streetwise happened, and I was a little less enthusiastic. That figure was just boring, and it didn't have that classic MMC top-tieredness. And now Hotspot is here, and I've gone from being okay with picking this setup to being excited for it. If the rest don't come out now, I'd be bummed. but not heartbroken, because frankly this thing rocks from the mountaintops like Thor on an electric guitar with the Valkyries backing him. This does not do everything well. No, instead of well, the word nightmarishly amazing comes to mind. How does it look? Oh, what? My hands are doing the devil's horns. I can't stop. How does it feel? Well, while writing this part, I had it in my hands and I was petting it like a James Bond villain pets a cat. How does it pose? Like it wants to bring hell to its weeping knees in fear of the Slayer's raw power. How does it transform? With witchcraft. I don't know how you make something this simple do all this and look so good at all times. How is the alt mode? I have seen figures that cost more, had longer, extremely complicated transformations with robot modes that looked more like their alt mode at base level that wound up significantly worse than this. It's fantastic and it's replete with gimmicks. The least amazing aspect of the whole figure is the accessories, which even so are still good, and the combined mode, though I didn't show it here, based on the pictures we've seen so far, is perhaps a little too wide, and outside of that, just jaw-droppingly good. With probably the best combination and transformation to get to that point of any figure. Oh, and again, no parts forming. None. There is never an excuse for parts forming, and MMC proves it once again. I say that having come up with a few excuses for parts forming over the last couple years. This is an utterly complete package. Nothing anyone else puts out rivals what Mastermind Creations does. And this is another example of them just being the kings of this franchise. If you are at all interested in this figure, buy it. Though immediately it went out of stock. Makes sense when MMC's first run is only ever like 3,000 units. But it's clear that they're already working on a second one, so this gets my highest recommendation. This is far better than a masterpiece. And before we go, let's thank a patron. And this time it's... How did Neb get back on the list? I removed him when he won. Also, congratulations to Starshine, whose favorite figure is Siege Omega Supreme, a figure, hilariously, I have constantly posed battling the MMC Bruticus. And I can't argue with this choice. I thought I was going to hate Omega, but I loved it. It looks so good, it feels so good, and despite the parts-forming transformation, they even made that seriously fun as well, with an alt mode that has an extreme degree of play factor. This is in the top 2 Titan figures Hasbro has ever released, and it's glorious. And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.